We're going to start the beginning of this show every single week or other week just laughing, because really the best part of every single show that I do is the 5 minutes to 20 minutes before the show starts, everyone. My next show will just be like Katie's podcast studio tech check hour. Well, we are back. Kimberly found us and is with us, even though we are live on a Wednesday instead of on a Thursday.
It's been wild, guys.
Yeah, it's been wild. Life happens. Live happens. Power outages happen if you live in Quebec. And
it was a humanitarian crisis. And I quote that from journalists who do war zones and natural disaster coverage, said that Quebec's response to our ice storm and power outage was worse than they have seen in any third world country. I know people are going to think that's exaggerated, but no, people starved to death. Yeah. So I'm here.
90s movies to get Natalie's mind off of this, because so far tonight we have power. If something happens and Natalie disappears, we know that the power is out again, and we will send all of our 90s movie vibes that way. But thank you for everyone's patience with us. We are backing into normal schedule hopefully next week, but normally we record this live on YouTube on Thursday nights at 9. But we have been off for the last couple weeks between ice storms and children's plays. We've been in a totally different world. How is that? Kimberly says, wow, right? How is other than being without power and the insanity that is Quebec, how has everything else been in the world of Nat?
Well, I mean, the good thing without power for 7 full days is that I read about 12 full books. So
our next podcast will just be like book talk.
Kind of living my best life, you know, a little medieval mystery, a little Scottish mystery, a little Scottish romance, you know, a little fantasy, some fae shit, you know, it was pretty good.
That does sound pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah.
All right. And I am really impressed because, as per usual in the world of Katie, I had way too many things on the calendar and said yes to way too many things. But I did have time to watch 10 Things I Hate About You last night. And I know that all of you watching and listening are probably incredibly sick of all of these only teen movies, that we've only done one adult movie so far on this show. But you know what? I am loving the level of nostalgia that we are rocking here. Yeah. And I think for the next few weeks, we're on a kick of Shakespeare-inspired teen movies. So that will be inclusive of Romeo and Juliet, which I know is just actual word for word of the Shakespeare play. But this one was based on Shakespeare. Yeah, and Hamlet, which will also be almost word for word, depending on what version we do. But yeah, we're in the world of Shakespeare.
Well, if we're doing the aughts Hamlet with Ethan Hawke, it was word for word, but took place in the aughts.
I forgot about that
the
one.
Aughts being the 2000s, if people are wondering.
So there's, I know.
Wondering.
I still like to call them the 2000s. I don't know. It feels weird to call them the aughts.
I mean, we called them the aughts then, and then suddenly we called them the 2000s. I'm still calling them the aughts, so I'm the odd duck out.
You're the odd duck out. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, so for Hamlet, there is the Mel Gibson Hamlet. Then there's the Branagh Hamlet. And then there's, I forgot about the Ethan Hawke Hamlet. There's a bunch of Hamlets. Yet no Hamlet to my
There's
knowledge. No,
also
like,
the Ian McKellen Hamlet.
oh
What?
yeah,
Lest we forget the god of Shakespeare, Ian McKellen.
it's very true. He is not in tonight's movie though, for everyone that's
No.
keeping up. So this movie
Okay.
is a teen update of a Shakespeare movie. And I found out my first fun fact of the night, even though I watched the movie, I still have fun facts. The first fun fact of the night is that the writers of this movie took inspiration from Clueless, which came out a couple of years prior to this,
Which is Jane Austen.
which is Jane Austen. But they were like,
But
oh, we can take famous pieces of literature and turn them into amazing teen romance comedies. And they really nailed it. I actually think this one, I know Mel will come at me. Sorry, Mel, but I actually think this one is better than Clueless. So maybe it's my Shakespeare love of Shakespeare.
It's more obvious than Clueless.
Yeah.
Like, so one, like, oh my God, so 90s, Valley Girl, Clueless right here.
All likes welcome here on tonight's episode, Nat.
When 10 Things I Hate About You came out, was it advertised as Shakespeare for teens? Or did we just not know? I mean, you and I knew.
I think it was more. Actually, I don't have this fact in any of my
don't
fun
remember.
facts, so I might have to go back and do a little bit more research and drop it into the show notes. But I will say that this movie opened to like a huge. It was a huge box office success, and it. I think that it was more overtly Shakespeare than Clueless was Emma, in answer to your question. But 100%. I don't know if
like,
it was.
They literally used lines from Shakespeare. Yeah. Like they integrated direct dialogue from the play into the movie.
There was direct dialogue. There was the last name of the sisters is Stratford, which is absolutely not just Shakespeare's hometown.
And Patrick Verona.
The school is called, oh no, now I'm going to forget the name of the school, but the school is named after the Padua High School, which is named after the city that the play takes place in. For anyone who is like, I'm not a Shakespeare nerd, oh no, I've stepped into the wrong episode. This movie is based on Taming of the Shrew, which if you have never read Taming of the Shrew, but you liked this movie, it's actually worth reading and doing a comparison, because it really is like a very, very brilliant update to that. Like
it's very spot on to the original play, to be honest. It is like scene for scene. Like it's not a huge deviation from the original play. And what my Shakespeare prof in university told me, plays are meant to be seen and heard, not read. So what you should do if you really want to read Shakespeare is take the play.
Join us every week and watch all of the 90s movies that are based on.
And watch it, like, and read it while watching it. Like, have the text while you're watching the play. And if you really want to watch...
Yeah.
And this was my university degree went to this. She's like, watch the movie while you read it.
That's awesome.
But so if you want to watch like the truest sort of version of this, my favorite is the 1967 Elizabeth Taylor. Oh my God, Taming of the Shrew. It's beyond. But it is exactly like 10 Things I Hate About You. Different decades.
If you want like one of the OG, it's not really the OG because the OG is the play, but if you want an OGer version of this movie. Before. Yeah, no, it is fantastic. So for those who don't know the storyline of this, maybe haven't seen the movie or haven't actually read the Shakespeare play, the story of this is actually kind of awesome. It's a comedy, so it's not as deep and dark as Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, so don't worry, hang in there with us. Although it does take some like dark turns, I guess, if you compare it to today's society.
I was going to say Romeo and Juliet is actually just a failed comedy. It's like Shakespeare got his heart broken and it's like, I'm making this comedy a tragedy. Like last minute. But we'll get to that when we watch Romeo and Juliet.
Now they die. Yeah, no. No, this one actually is a comedy.
This is actually just funny.
So you have two sisters in this film / play, and one is young and naive and lovely. Let's call her lovely. She's lovely-ish. She's somewhat spoiled, but she's lovely. And then you have the Shrew, who is...
So Bianca is naive and lovely. Kate, or in the movie Cat, is the Shrew. She's in the movie, she's a feminist. Which in the play too, she's a feminist. Which the word didn't exist back in Shakespeare's time, but still, she is against misogyny. She is pro her gender.
Yep.
She is pro education. She is pro individuality, thinking for yourself.
Hopefully we'd all be friends, really. Team Shrew all the way through all of this. Not that I don't like Bianca. I mean, she actually is, especially in this movie, she's played in a really likable way. She's like a little bit ditzy and a little bit naive, but in general,
but she picks up pretty
really
quick. She figures herself out pretty fast. Like, so Bianca is in love with the dreamy guy, Joey. Played by Andrew Keegan, who was a 90s teen heartthrob. We'll get more onto Andrew Keegan later, but
we have some facts.
We have some shocking facts, but so she was in love with a teen heartthrob of the high school, and the new kid in school, the geeky guy Cameron, pretends to be her tutor for French class, and he's instantly like gobsmacked, love at first sight with her. And she's like, oh, but he's not as popular as Joey. But she very quickly realizes Joey's a bore and a buffoon, and Cameron actually is attentive and kind and really likes her for her.
What I really like about Bianca and Cameron really is that in this film, it almost is less like they have this burgeoning love story, but really, at least for Bianca, it's almost less about how like quote unquote boy crazy she is, or like how in love with all of these guys she is, and more about the fact that she just desperately wants to be less sheltered. She wants to have like genuine high school teenage experiences. She has been restricted from doing all of these things. She's not allowed to date. She's not allowed to really go out anywhere. She's questioned on everything that she does. And to her, it just feels incredibly unfair. Her older sister is admittedly, like, in her mind, like, very, obnoxious. She doesn't want to do anything. She's like, she's ruining everything for Bianca, which is totally fair for someone who feels like she has had no life experiences. So I like that they really do a fantastic job of making it feel very relatable, remembering back to what it was like to be a teenage girl, but also less like, less kind of like sexualized and like boy crazy and kind of over the top, and more just like, she, like, as the opportunities present themselves,
she's just in love with a guy.
Yeah, she's like kind of into Joey, but really, like, even that at the very beginning seems to be much more on, she just wants to go to parties. She finds it like really flattering that he really likes her. And then when Cameron appears and like presents her with this opportunity that's like, hey, I've heard that you're only allowed to date if your older Shrew sister dates. Like, I can solve this problem for you. She's like, sure, anything, like, happy to go to do anything with you if you can kind of release me from this cage and this prison and this like isolation that she's been trapped into. So I mean, part of it is the actress that plays Bianca, Larissa Olnick, is just fantastic. I would love to know like what really has happened to her. I didn't actually look that up, but she was in
a lot of favorites as a teen. She was in The Secret World of Alec Mack. Mm-hmm. And also Larissa Olnick sounds like a good Yuki kid. I obviously adore her. I feel like, I'm half Ukrainian. I feel like she sounds like a Ukrainian girl. I'm like, I get you. I love you.
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing I love, so the premise of the play, the father is very overbearing. He's a single father. Mm-hmm. And the sister is very uptight. And we only find out later in the movie she's uptight because of her personal experiences. Mm-hmm. More so than the father being overbearing. He thinks he's protecting them, but really we find out Kat is protecting her sister. Yeah. What I loved in this interpretation was the dad being overprotective. It's not just he's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. He's an obstetrics and gynecological doctor.
Yeah.
So he's
kind of lovable, I have to say.
He's actually amazing.
Yeah.
So he's an OBGYN, deals with pregnancy, with birthing babies. So he's like, I've seen all the horror stories. I know how bad your life can go if you get knocked up young. And he's always trying to scare them with teen pregnancy, which I think is super hilarious. Because it's like, what else are you going to do as a single dad to be like, to two like near adult women? Like,
Yeah.
like how are you going to scare them?
Yeah, he's kind of great because he's never. I mean, this movie could easily,
Yeah.
and certainly if it wasn't portrayed kind of as a teen comedy, or even in today's society, it could easily go into, you know, the world of him being like really abusive and like not, you know, really like locking them away and not allowing them any kind of access. And instead, like he does, you know, he comes up with this like concept where he's like, doesn't really want either of them to go out. He has one daughter who never seems to want to go out at all, and then one who desperately wants to go out. And so he comes up with this genius idea in his mind of, you can date Bianca when your sister, who clearly does not want to date, when she dates, then you can go out and do all these kinds of things. But even that, again, like that category of like dates seems to be like somewhat about the actual relationships, but more just about like even going out to parties or prom or like all these different things. So it's, and yet we find out later, as you just said, that Kat, when she was younger, it sounds like when she was probably even not that much younger than what Bianca is in this movie, she seemed to have a lot more liberty to be able to do things because she ended up in these really terrible situations, which is why she is acting the way she is now and why she's so protective. So it's a little bit interesting. We never really find out if it's like, is that because their mother was still in the picture at that point, who they talk about briefly in the movie, who is, you know, has left, is not there anymore?
I got the impression the mother wasn't around, and
maybe he was just less overprotective at that point. I don't know.
Or, like, who knows? He could have been grieving. He could have just been less attentive. Or she could have just been sneakier than Bianca. Who knows? True. But, so we find out that Kat in the past and was dating Joey briefly, and she had sex with him, and she very much regretted it.
Yeah.
And then when she realized she regretted it and didn't want to do it anymore, and the reason that she did it in the first place was just because everybody in her class was doing it. And she's like, no, I don't want to be a part of that dialogue. I don't want to be in this. Joey, shamed her and made her out to be the weirdo that we see at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
So when she reveals this to her sister, they kind of have this huge bonding moment. And that's what I loved about this movie is it's not about the romance. It's really about the sister relationship.
Yeah, and every moment of it, I mean, other than Joey, who's definitely just a jerk throughout the entire movie.
He plays it so well.
Remains a jerk throughout the entire movie, but every single other character is like has these arcs of growth and also are just likable, even like they're all very like strong characters, both in character as well as like they have like a great understanding of themselves. Like Kat seems to be completely fine with her decision of disengaging. She was like, oh, I wanted to be like everyone else. I didn't like what the result was. I backed out and you know, and became more myself. And she's quite comfortable in being this like pariah at her school.
She found herself.
She still has friends.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like she's like totally isolated and alone. Like she's actually quite different, even though it's probably meant to be a similar kind of character. She's really kind of different than like Lainey Boggs from She's All That, who is like very isolated, has you know, next to no friends. I feel like Kat has like, she's got a community, she's got a plan for her life, she's got like, you know, she's got these other things that she's doing. She doesn't seem to at any point be left out in any of it. She's made this decision and she's totally fine with that. Which is kind of nice, like admirable.
I love the music that she's into. They describe as like angry feminist or something along those lines. And I'm like, but that was really mainstream popular at the time. I like that's the kind of, it was what, something to Cleo. What was the band?
Letters to Cleo.
And Letters to Cleo.
And they were
very mainstream at the time.
Yeah, they're in this movie. I think they said three times.
Several times. Yeah. I love that.
Her love of them is so pure. Yeah.
when I was a kid, so the prom song is They Have Letters to Cleo. Because back in these American movies, they always had a real live band at prom, which I was like, is that a thing?
Americans watching or listening, did you have a real band at dances and proms? Like, was that a thing? That was not a thing.
Band?
Yeah. Well, anyone that
Letters
follows
to Cleo, they play Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me.
Mm-hmm.
So they do a cover of a song, and I was like, it turned me onto that as a teen. I was like, oh yeah, Cheap Trick, like they're amazing. So it's like the popularity of the song from the movie also turned me on to the popularity of the song from the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it really reverted me back to like, go look up that band and be like, I love that song.
Yeah. I'm definitely living my best life with this podcast. The second that I rewatch these movies and like the opening songs come up, I'm like, oh, the soundtrack. I'm like watching it. I'm holding my phone up. I'm like, YouTube Music, download album, like saving that for later. And this whole week, I've just been listening to it as I've been driving around. It holds up, everyone. Like if you grew up in this era, or you were a teenager or a young adult or even a full adult when this movie came out, the soundtrack is awesome.
I actually think it would just play well again now if it came out now.
Yeah.
Because I find a lot of those sort of what we called alternative music back in the day, I guess it was like pop rock or...
Yeah, it was like slightly edgier pop, basically. I mean, it was kind of not.
Yeah, I mean, some alternative had no pop to it. But it was not quite hard rock. But anyways, but that type of music, I'm like, isn't that what they're all doing nowadays, anyways? I'm listening to the radio and I'm like, yeah, you guys sound like we loved in the 90s. I'm like, oh, it's back. Oh, we've hit that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We're back in the 90s. Woo.
Exactly. And I love, for anyone that's been following our Instagram account, A, thank you for following our Instagram account. And B, I was having so much fun watching this movie and just like basically posting my feelings as stories and videos on our Instagram account. But one of the first things I noticed, and literally in like the opening scenes of this movie, is that there is this like castle of a high school. And I was like, this is a high school? And I feel like I probably had this original reaction because we are very Canadian. But it turns out that this high school is actually still a functioning high school, like has been a high school since I think 1906. And is still
it was like a museum or a historical site.
No, it is like actually a high school and is still a high school. And I now... No. I've always been jealous of not having had the opportunity to go to high school in the States. And now I'm specifically jealous of not having been to this high school, this specific high school in the United States. I can't remember exactly where it is. I'll have to post that in the show notes afterwards, but it is actually still a functioning high school. And apparently also has had like a number of very, very famous like past presidents and celebrities who have spoken at like commencement addresses. Like it's like a legit high school, which just makes me so incredibly happy because it opened and that was my immediate reaction. I was like, my three first moments of this movie were first, the second the song started, I was like, oh, right, I love this soundtrack. And I had to download the soundtrack. I had to pause, tell Natalie that I was downloading the soundtrack, download the soundtrack. The second was the high school. And then the third was the second that Andrew Keegan walked on screen. I was like, what happened to Andrew Keegan? And I had to search that. And I'll tell you all, I didn't even read the whole article because immediately the answer that came up was just like Andrew Keegan involved in some kind of like religious organization and just like went off the rails. And I was like, oh no.
He retired from acting to start a spiritual community.
Okay.
In my mind, I'm like, I still think with all the like, we're trying to save like Britney, we're trying to save Amanda Bynes, and I'm still like, can we start saving Tom Cruise? Because he's like deep in a cult. And I apologize for anybody who is a part of Scientology and doesn't believe that it's a cult, but you know, on paper, it is a cult.
Thoughts and prayers for Andrew Keegan. That's all we're going to say.
And no, but he's apparently out of it now.
Oh, good.
And he's restarted acting, I think, in 2019.
Oh, so he's all right.
I mean, he started the cult. And okay, so this is what I found funny. In the movie, they reference how Kat has, she likes pretty boys. because she has a picture of Jared Leto, who was a huge 90s heartthrob from the TV show My So-Called Life. He played Jordan Catalano. And
also cult vibes.
And so apparently Jared Leto in his band 30 Seconds to Mars have literally bought an island and started a cult. So I'm like, how ironic is it in this movie that they reference as Jared Leto as the hottie, and all the hottie in
all
the movie,
stereotypes were just every hot 90s male actor
started a fucking cult.
Is now involved in cults. Exactly.
I mean, I know Tom Cruise didn't start a cult, and from what I've understand, because I did go into a little deep dive during lockdown about Tom Cruise and Scientology, it seems that he was recruited into this, and he is kept separate from what the core of the cult is. And really, I think we need to save him. So internet, like, if you want like a new project, save Tom Cruise. He doesn't know he needs to be saved. Like, God almighty. But Andrew Keegan had a cult.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so we'll have to follow up on that. I feel like
I don't want to.
Yeah, Nat's like, we're good. We're just gonna move straight into the next movie. But we've now been talking for 26 minutes, and we have not yet talked about Heath Ledger.
Yes, okay.
I will try very hard not to cry because I still love Heath Ledger, and this was his first American movie. Fun fact:
he was already famous from the TV show in Australia called Home and Away, which is a huge sort of soap opera kind of show in Australia. So I kind of knew of him from that, because we do in Canada get a lot of sort of Commonwealth television available to us. But in America, 10 Things I Hate About You was his big break. This was his first role.
His first American role. I absolutely love it. I think my favorite fun fact about any movie that we've done so far is the fact that the car that Kat is driving in this movie, that Julia Stiles' character is driving, was actually at the time Heath Ledger's real car. and it is fantastic. It is like the coolest look. I know nothing about cars. My husband Dane is not here to correct us.
Cool looking car.
It is a really cool looking car, and it's just like it's
like an American muscle car of some kind.
It feels like wonderfully her. It's like both really like muscle car, but also like somewhat feminine, and it's just great. And that's my favorite fun fact. No other fun fact will top this one. I just thought it was fantastic. But so for anyone again who hasn't seen this movie or who's following along, he plays the dangerous bad boy at school that no one really knows a lot about. There's like tons of rumors and gossip on who he is and all the crazy things that he may have done. Was he in prison? Did he like murder people? Like there's all these crazy rumors going on about him, and he kind of loves living in the shadows of that. And he is the person that they hire to take Kat, the sister, out on a date so that the two men both in love with Bianca will get the chance to take her out on a date. And so I love that he goes along with this, which I think is a ridiculous, it's just an insane premise. And yet he's like, okay,
he does extort them for a bunch of money.
He does extort them for a bunch of money.
You want me to do this? Give me so much money.
Yeah. He does extort them for a bunch of money, but he goes all in, which is what I really love about him. He's so like on the fringes of this school environment, and he's like not really part of any clique, and he's scary to everyone. And these two nerdy kids, Cameron and his friend Michael, like are both like there to get him to be paid by Joey, the rich kid, but helping Cameron win Bianca over. So it's this kind of weirdly complicated triangle, I guess, but it's just wonderful in how okay he is with all of it. He's like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. I'll be paid by the rich guy, and you two can help me figure out how to win over this woman who no one wants. It's almost like he really appreciates the challenge of winning her over as much as the money. Maybe not at first, but
from what I
thereafter.
Took away from it is that once he tried to go out with her on the first date and it totally backfired and didn't work. Once he met her, he's like, okay, now I'm all in. Like, pay me more money, but I'm all in.
I know. He pretty quickly is like, oh, she's difficult. So like a
She's
little
terrible.
bit more money.
Give me more money. I'm all
Exactly. He thinks it's going to be easy. It's not.
Her big date that they go on, which is Katie, like, and I'm going to say this, it's Katie's favorite thing of all time.
It is.
And her husband better recreate this for her at some point.
It's true.
I will egg him on to that because she's been dreaming about this since the 90s.
Yes, since this movie came out.
Yeah, they go on a paintball date. But before the paintball, they go on a
they do paddle boating.
Paddle boat. Okay.
Yeah.
Because so in Montreal, in Quebec, we call them pedalos.
Yes.
Because you pedal and it's apparently it's French. We call it pedalos, but paddle boats in English. So
do you know what's really heartbreaking though about this? So everyone out there is actually so the movie is filmed in Seattle and is very clearly Seattle. Like it opens with the Seattle skyline. Like they make a deal that it is in Seattle. But apparently the city of Seattle, some years after this movie was released, played up the entire popularity of this film and did you can experience Seattle like as a couple, like from 10 Things I Hate About You. And they outlined all the different places that they went to and like where you can go and relive this movie romantic experience. With the exception that the paintball place does not exist. All the other places do. And no one in Seattle figured out how to do. So it's not regular paintball. Everyone yelling at the screen who's like, there's obviously paintball places in Seattle. I know that there are obviously paintball places in Seattle. This place, it's like balloons. It's like paint balloons. So it doesn't like give you welts and injure you. It's this really romantic, like now we're covered
black
in
eyes
paint.
from Experian.
Yeah. It's super cute. Like they're like hiding behind like bales of hay and just like splattering paint on each other and they're covered in paint and then they can kiss and it's really sweet and sexy and everything about it was great, but no one figured out how to do that. So if anyone wants to go in with me on a business idea, this one is really lacking here.
I just wanted to say nothing is sexy about a pedalo date or a paddle boat date. It's like, have you been on a paddle boat on choppy water? It is a nightmare. Your quads are burning. You're paddling hard. You're going nowhere. You don't know how to steer the damn thing because it's whatever the wind takes you. There is nothing romantic about a paddle boat.
Not when you're competitive. Like if you were not us and you like actually were like cutesy and sat there and like and we're fine with being like abandoned in the middle of the water because it was just the two of you, it might have the potential to be romantic. But the two of us are incredibly competitive. So we'd be like, well, we need to go faster to get where we are going to the paintball place because
I've only been on one paddle boat and it's like a Cadillac of a paddle boat and it was Mrs. Fanny's paddle boat. It's honestly like it's chrome edge. It's literally the Cadillac of paddle boats. That thing can cut through water, nobody's business. But a regular real life paddle boat, no. Nightmare. Anyway, so I loved how in the movie I'm like, that's not romantic. And then they go to the paintball and I was like, okay, like, that's romantic.
And I'm like, swoon, paintball. And then all my dreams were broken then and now to still years later, still no. I don't even know what to call it.
Note Katie's husband, take her to paintball, set it up with some friends.
Recreate this. It couldn't possibly be hard. Get some kind of paint that like somewhat comes off. They wear these like all white like painter onesies. I don't even know how to properly say it. The whole thing is just very sweet. You know what's really funny? Actually, I was rewatching. This is not a movie we've done, but I was watching Princess Diaries with my 8-year-old, and in this scene, there's like a scene in Princess Diaries where Anne Hathaway and her mother have this like moment where they have balloons filled with paint that are like thumbtacked to a wall, and they throw darts at it to create art. And my 8-year-old was like, can we do that? And I was like, heck yeah, let's do that. And it totally made me think of this scene. I was like, let's do that. And then also we can have, Dad and I can have a paintball fight with you. So yeah, this is another movie that set
balloons with paint.
It set my expectations really bad. Movies. Now that I'm back on this train, everyone, now I'm entirely living in the past and in like fictional things that writers thought were really great that looked awesome on camera and don't exist in real life.
It did look good on
It
camera.
did look good on
I
camera.
have to say, and that's the scene. So that's the scene where Patrick Verona, aka Heath Ledger, becomes all super likable. He opens up to Kat. He
Yeah.
tells her, like, no,
He
I
hasn't
never went to
actually killed
prison. I was
anyone.
actually,
Yeah.
he's like, I didn't kill anybody. I was actually
Mm-hmm.
taking care of my sick grandfather.
I
And
know.
while he was sort of in hospice care, like I stayed with him the whole time. And it was, anyway, so he's like this gorgeous, beautiful, sensitive, mysterious creature,
Yeah.
and he wins her over. Oh, actually, so they go to a house party at one point. Was that before the paintball? Yes.
Yes, the house party was before the paintball.
So the house party for me is the most epic scene because so Katie and I used to do a lot of writing / sometimes we talk about still doing a lot of writing, and we
We're
still do a
writers.
lot of
Yes,
writing.
exactly.
And the one scene that we always try to recreate is this scene at the house party. So this teen girl, Kat, she goes and she's like, I hate everybody. I hate being here. I'm going to get wasted because you think I won't. Because you think I'm overly responsible and I have a stick up my butt. And
Yep.
she goes and she takes a couple of drinks and then a good song comes on, which I love that it's a Biggie song, a Notorious B.I.G. song.
Mm-hmm.
And she's dancing on a table and she gets drunk and she passes out. Slash has a minor concussion because she hit her head on a chandelier and passes out. But Heath Ledger, Patrick Verona takes care of her, and it's, for me, that was I love that. I love that whole scene. I love the teen
Yes.
testing her boundaries, and like especially because everybody thought she could never do that, and it was
Yeah.
so against who she was as a person.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was my favorite.
It's also it's a wonderful counterbalance to her past experience with Joey. So like again, which we don't know yet that experience in the movie, but the the experience that she had with Joey where he, took advantage of her and he wouldn't back down, he made her feel less than and he like made fun of her afterwards. It was just this horrible thing. Whereas you have Patrick's character who is basically like he goes to the party with her. Like he is there on a date with her.
He does lose her at the party.
He loses her at the party, but he's constantly like checking in on her. Like he sees where she
John
is.
Cusack,
Very John
anything.
Cusack. Yeah, he checks in on her like throughout the party, but he never gets in her face about it. He doesn't stop her from doing anything that she wants to do. He's just sort of like in the wings, but he is immediately there when she hits her head. He like gets her out of that place. He's, he sits out on an outside like swing, but like one of those like wood like based swings, and
very
she like
romantic.
He's like trying to be all supportive and sweet, and she throws up all over his shoes and like drives her home. Like he's so like, and he never once takes advantage of her.
He doesn't
she throws
judge
herself
her. He
at
doesn't
him.
take advantage of her.
He says no. Like he ends up hurting her feelings and making her angry because he doesn't kiss her. But it's nice that he's like,
but she couldn't give consent, which like consent wasn't really a word at the time. Yeah. I mean, it's a reality from all time, but it wasn't a word that we used at the time. But he was very aware of consent, and it's funny because she was like, well, you didn't kiss me when you could have, and he's like, consent, which he doesn't say again, like that word didn't exist at the time, but in the context of this. But I love that he was like very for that. It was, and again, very true to the Shakespeare play.
Yeah.
Like, very true to it.
Yeah, that would have been a hard character to cast because he has these moments where he both has to be you're very aware as a viewer that he is doing this thing that she is going to be really upset about, but you're also very aware that he is starting to fall for her, if not has already fallen for her. And he's like both like
and a feminist.
Yeah, he's like he has to be like very masculine and believable as this like creepy, mysterious bad boy, but then he also has to be like likable and believable as this very charming, like super like progressive feminist counterpoint. Like he needs to be like a great partner to her throughout the movie. And so I mean, justifiably, there were a number of articles while researching this film talking about how difficult it was to cast him and how lucky they were to find someone as brilliant as Heath Ledger
literally
to play
this
him.
American film found somebody all the way in Australia who was only Australia famous. He was nobody at the time
Yeah.
in the world of Hollywood.
Yeah.
He was perfectly cast, though. He was, I mean, also, mind you, he was very unique looking for an American audience. He had the dark eyes, the dark hair, the tan.
Freckles. Yeah.
Yeah, he had fair skin, yet he was tanned. He had
Yeah.
freckles. And I mean, his dark eyes were more hazel because, as Kat points out in the movie, they have a bit of green in them. We all noticed Kat. Yes, we did.
We did. We did, Kat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also love how the portrayal of concussion is super inaccurate nowadays, because we didn't know then, because back in the 80s and the 90s, we thought if you had a concussion, like, keep the person awake for at least 24 to 48 hours or they'll die. It's like nowadays it's like, oh my God, please let them sleep for at least a week. If they're unconscious for like several days, that is the best thing for them. But back then, it's like you had to be awake for minimum 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. So he kept trying to keep her awake. It was cute, but yeah,
he has
don't do that if you have a concussion. Call your doctor, follow concussion protocol. It is not
unless you're in a 90s movie, in which case, hey, let the hot guy carry you to your car, to his car. It'll all work out. Yeah, no, he's great. He has that moment, which I think is absolutely like heroic and fantastic. And then he has the like famous, which he apparently just changed the song choice for this, but he has the famous scene where he grabs the microphone at a, I love that this school does archery, just as an aside, seems like a bad idea for a school, but okay.
So
they do archery.
Gym class.
Okay, it's gym class.
It's gym class. But so what I love is very unrealistic, at least in my experience, to a gym class is they have like the archery team, the soccer team, they have the varsity teams, plus the gym classes all happening at the same time. So you've like track and field and archery and soccer, football, all happening at the same time. Like, people are going to get hurt, which in the movie they do. And golf. They also have golf.
Yeah, they have golf. Yeah, they have like a maybe this magical school that I'm definitely going to go to as an adult. I'm going to do like that thing like Drew Barrymore does in the movie where she goes back to hide. That's going to be me. I'm going to be an undercover journalist
Josie
at this high school. Exactly.
Josie Grossi. Love her.
Grossi. But yeah, no, I love, so she's down on the field and there's, the bleachers all the way across in this gigantic, ridiculous school setting. And he grabs
it's like
a full stadium, yeah.
The Montreal Alouettes stadium basically looks like that, which is our professional American style football team.
Yeah.
In Montreal is the Montreal Alouettes.
Exactly.
They're adjacent to NFL.
Exactly. CFL. So yeah, he grabs the microphone and starts singing and dancing to win her back after she feels rejected and upset and sensitive about the fact that she
gets
like
the geeks in on the nerds from the AV club to help him out, which is I love that. I love when the nerds get involved because they're people too.
But he just owns that scene. I mean, between like the twinkle in his eye and the song choice, which was entirely Heath, and the dancing, like, he just is fantastic. If you don't want to watch this movie, please just do yourself a favor and watch this scene. Just YouTube this scene. It's fantastic, and it makes you smile for the amazing time that we as an audience got to have Heath Ledger for. It's like heartbreaking that he is gone, but that these moments of just an incredibly brilliant actor at this point, a very young age and at a beginning of his career, really.
He was at the beginning of his career when he passed away, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He was under 30, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
He was brilliant already. I mean, most people, especially stateside, view him as brilliant for movies like Batman. He played the Joker. Mm-hmm. And he was my favorite that he did was movie Candy. It's very dark, it's very heavy, but it's probably one of the most brilliant performances I've ever seen. Heath Ledger in Candy. It was fantastic. He was a brilliant actor, and we could see it already in 10 Things I Hate About You. We really loved him. Also in, what was it, A Knight's Tale?
A Knight's Tale. I know.
That had many brilliant people in it.
I know that we like have mostly been doing 90s, but Kimberly is asking about Breakfast Club. We have not yet reviewed Breakfast Club, although we certainly will. It's, you know, it's one of our favorites for sure. But yeah, Knight's Club Knight's Tale
John
should also be on the
Hughes,
list.
just shout out to
Just John
Kimberly. Like,
Hughes.
any John Hughes movie is my favorite, and I think most things are based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just watched something recently. Disney released something called The Prom Pact, and it
I
was
haven't seen
all
that one
about
yet.
John Hughes movies.
Yeah.
Like they referenced all these movies from the 80s and how, anyways, how it's still influencing teens today. And yes, like those movies were so impactful.
Yeah.
But I do think 10 Things I Hate About You is up there with that.
I really do.
I mean,
And it,
Shakespeare. I call him, in all of our notes that Katie and I pass back and forth when we're prepping for the show, I call him Shakes. And I've been calling him Shakes since we were students studying him. Because I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and write out Shakespeare longhand. So every time we wrote notes since the 90s about this, I'm like, and Shakes. He's brilliant. He was so... And one scene that I really loved was... they used some like disses, some slang that Shakespeare had invented. So Shakespeare, if anybody's interested, invented most of our swear words that we use nowadays. And what I love in this movie is that they used some of the more like swear words that we think are older and then translated them into 90s jargon. And I was like, that's adorable. But funny enough, we still use Shakespeare swear words and we don't use the 90s jargon anymore. Which
all
I
that
think
I
is
ever think about
amazing.
when I think of like Shakespearean insults is, which again we will review in the coming weeks, but do you bite your thumb at me, sir? I do bite my thumb, sir, but I do not bite my thumb at you, sir.
I bite my thumb, sir.
I bite my thumb, sir. Yeah. So Romeo and Juliet had by far my favorite.
Well, so if people are interested, some of the swear words that Shakespeare came up with were, I guess the most one that we use the most often is bitch. He made that up. Yeah. He uses, so it obviously, not obviously, it is a word that is, the meaning of the word bitch is female dog. It's a female dog in heat is a bitch. But Shakespeare is like, well, people can be bitches too. So, like, Shakespeare came up with that. And there are several others. As we go through our little Shakespeare / teen movie series, we'll bring up a few others. But, I mean, just sit with that.
Like, perfect for this particular film, because really this play and this movie adaptation of it are really centered around this concept of like, I mean, a shrew, and really in this update in particular, like what Kat's character is in the eyes of a lot of the students and a lot of her peers is a bitch, right? Like is a character that is like
shrew.
Yeah, it's like completely
even
removed.
Shakespeare's time in like 1650 whatever, or 40 whatever, they would not have said bitch. No. I love that. Yeah. I love that he made that shit up for us. It's anyways, I'm tickled. So my in case anybody's wondering, my favorite subject at school was Shakespeare. I love knowing where the language that we speak today came from. And it literally came from, like, the way we speak English today came from this Shakespearean time. Yeah. There are, of course, many other people that it's attributed to, but Shakespeare was the most recognizable, like the one that you would know today.
Yeah.
So how we speak. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Billy.
Oh, well, anything else that we want to say about this movie? I mean, it should come as no surprise that this, again, is one that is one of our favorites. We are both big Shakespeare fans. Yeah. The concept of updating, and I will actually include Clueless in this, like the concept of updating, like canon classic literature into modern day, specifically teenage movies, I think is just really brilliant, because it both makes that content accessible to a generation of people who, with the exception of the two of us, by and large are not overly into literature or into that level of canon literature, but also like reminds, I think, everyone about how how relatable a lot of these storylines still are. Like, I feel like sometimes we think that Shakespeare or Austen or any of these stories are like, well, that's what happened, generations ago, years ago. Like, that's not what it's like in today's
No.
society. And a play like The Taming of the Shrew, again, Shakespeare is the 1500s, right? Like, so, I mean, and we are now in 2023, and this story is still relatable. Like, what is it? What does it mean to be a shrew? What does it mean to, have these levels of restriction? And, how is it to fall in love? What do you like? All of these
I mean,
concepts and all of these relationships are still really applicable, certainly for teenagers and definitely
it's
for
the
adults
teen
as well.
experience. It's the
Yeah.
coming of age experience.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the genre, it doesn't matter the coming of age experience, we all live it.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to go through it.
Yeah.
And it's always relevant. And
Yeah.
exactly what you said, like it was relevant, it is relevant, it will be relevant. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Katie and I particularly love about these authors and creators. Austen, Shakespeare,
Mm-hmm.
Hughes. We can throw in many others because Katie
Yeah.
and I are huge literature nerds, but
This is not a
you guys have
literature
no idea the
podcast.
depths of that. But
But yeah, no,
um,
so yeah, I mean,
wow.
props to the writing duo behind
Yes.
behind this movie. They did also go on to create a lot of other really iconic movies. One that is on our list in this Shakespeare mini series that we're doing as part of this podcast is She's the Man, which again is based on another Shakespeare play. But
I
yeah,
love
let
it. It's
us.
one of my favorites. And for all the Amanda Bynes fans out there, She's the Man, I think is one of the funniest movies. I mean, it's Shakespeare again. It's what, Twelfth
Yeah.
Night?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you don't know how funny it is until you relate it to Shakespeare. If you think it's just a dumb teen movie, it's a dumb teen movie. Also Channing Tatum's first big, but it's so funny.
So funny. It's so
We're
good.
gonna watch that.
We're
We will
gonna
also
watch.
watch some Shakespeare tragedies for you
Yes.
because
So we're gonna
there's
watch
nothing like
O
a good
next
old
week.
tragedy.
Yes, we're gonna dive into O next week, which Julia Stiles, who plays Kat in this
Also,
movie, is also in that one, which seems to be kind of our thing in this show is we find like an actor and then we're like, oh, all right, well, the next 3 movies by that actor in this
we're gonna
experience.
latch
So
onto you for a second.
we're gonna latch on to Julia Stiles for a second.
Love her.
She's definitely done a decent amount of Shakespeare like
I have
adaptations
to
and
say, a lot of people in this movie went on to huge, huge, huge
huge
careers.
careers. Yeah.
Um, and even what's his name? Oh my goodness.
Well, you have, I mean, obviously Heath Ledger, who we've talked about. Julia Stiles has had a really epic career.
Current.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt has had a really fantastic career. He plays Cameron. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think who else.
No,
Oh,
I'm thinking the nerd.
the the nerd I can't remember, but the guidance counselor
David
who.
David Krumholtz.
Oh yes, all right,
Krumholtz.
Krumholtz.
Krumholtz. Okay, so he was the go-to nerd in the 90s and
Mhm.
the go-to Shakespeare like actor in the 90s, which because there was a lot of these Shakespeare movies in the 90s and in the
Yeah.
early aughts. He was very go-to for that because he was, I mean, yeah, he played the nerd all the time. He's a very good actor. I always enjoy him.
Yeah.
And I think he was recently in, not recently at all. I just
Wasn't he
watched
on
it
like
recently.
Criminal Minds? Is that the one what he's on?
It's possible. I saw him, I think, yesterday in Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Oh, solid choice. I like
I
that
watched
one.
that with my sister-in-law's nephew.
Oh, that's a solid one.
That movie was made more than a decade ago. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
recently he was in. I'm like, no, that
Yeah.
wasn't. I just saw that recently.
Yeah, that's a
Anyways,
good
he's
one.
very good. I enjoy him. Thank you, David.
Oh my gosh.
I also want to shout out to past episodes. We've posted on Instagram some of our favorite sort of
GIFs,
reels from
memes,
movies that we
reels,
watched,
yeah.
and we posted our favorite scene from Empire Records where AJ and Warren are dancing, and Lucas.
Yeah.
And the actor Johnny Wentworth, who plays AJ, liked our post, and Katie and I
We love
just
you, Johnny.
about died. Just about, like, my heart
Oh.
jumped into my throat and stopped, and I'm like, AJ.
I know.
Thank you, AJ.
We will always see
Johnny,
you
we
as
love you.
AJ. We just, we do the actors that the writers and the directing teams and the actors that bring these movies to life. Right? It's just been so fun to relive a lot of these
So
movies and
thankful.
rewatch them. And I'm excited too to dive into some that we haven't yet seen, which I think will be fun. But it's been just
Yes.
fun going back in time. Well, it should come as no surprise here at the end that this is 5 Christian Taters. I'm counting
I
5.
hold up 10.
5.
I hold up 2 5s, which is 10. But
10
5 taters.
things we love about this movie. We didn't even get into all the amazing fun facts about this movie. We did cover quite a few of them. We will drop the links from our sources into the show notes as well as into the YouTube description. But this movie was just really brilliantly put together, and I think did a really fantastic job of bringing a play to life without just directly taking the language of the play and really updating it and modernizing it without losing the integrity of the story, which
It
I think
was
is hard.
very play to screen. Like it did not deviate. So anybody who's like, I don't like Shakespeare, I'm not going to read Shakespeare in your high school class, watch this movie.
watch
It's
this.
like, oh yeah, you love Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You do. You do.
You do.
Everybody does. They just don't know it
must.
yet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You just haven't seen it in the right venue.
Exactly. You haven't seen it in the right venue.
Shakespeare wants you to see it and to hear it and to experience it, and that's what's good about it.
Absolutely.
And so obviously it's 5 taters.
Really, I should have put in all 10. It's 10 taters for us. It's 10 taters. It's 10 things we love about this movie. Last fun fact, this movie actually was named after a journal entry that the writer had done after have gone through an ugly breakup with her boyfriend. She wrote down 10 things I hate about you and started journaling that as a way to deal with a breakup. And so I think it's just so fantastic that it came together in this movie. And I just think that all of the actors in this film did a really fantastic job bringing this story to life.
Very privileged to have had this movie.
Exactly. I super appreciate all of you being on this journey with us. Again, I apologize that we were out the last couple of weeks, but I promise we're back on track now, at least for the next little bit. Fingers crossed on weather and outages and everything. But normally, if you were just brand new or you popped in, I saw someone in our chat who we hadn't seen before. So if you're here for the first time or stumbled across this video or audio on your favorite podcast player, we normally we live stream in front of an incredible live studio audience of Kimberly and others here on YouTube.
Wanderer.
The Wanderer. Hello. We do stream every single Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then the audio only of that episode drops out to all of your favorite podcast players the following morning, usually Fridays. Yes. I won't promise morning, but definitely Fridays. We should be back on track. But if you like it, definitely leave us a comment, review, share with a friend, send us an email. All of those amazing details are in the description and in the show notes. We would love to hear your movie recommendations. We're working off a gigantic list, but hey, if you throw one in there, and it catches our eye, we will pause our list and pick up.
I checked my list. It was about like 600 movies from just the 90s. So if you have a preference to jump that list, just let us know.
Right now, this one at the top. Yeah.
Right now, we're going to go through a little Shakespeare kick. So next week, we're going to do which is an early 2000s movie starring McKee Pfeiffer and Josh Hartnett, two serious heartthrobs from back in the day, and Julia Stiles, of course. And that is based on the play Othello. So also from the 90s, the Royal Shakespeare Company filmed a couple of stage performances, and the performances were made for film, starring Ian McKellen as Iago in Othello. It is the best, most chilling, most haunting, most brilliant performance of Othello I've ever seen. Is the Royal Shakespeare Company for film Othello, which I think you can find it on YouTube. You can definitely find it on the interwebs.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you want to watch that, and then the movie love it. Such a good, You guys, it's another teen movie. So good.
Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. We're gonna
Not
hang out in
sorry.
this space for a little
There's
bit.
no sorry. Sorry, Demi Lovato. I'm not sorry about any of it.
Not so. The Canadians are not
She's
sorry.
so polite.
Yeah,
I am
exactly.
not.
Exactly. Well, from us here at the video store to all of you watching, we will see you again.
And yes, Kimberly
next
Lawrence
week.
Fishburne is in that.
Yes, it's gonna be so good. If you haven't seen it yet, grab some popcorn. Let us know what you think about it in the comments if you're watching along. I know Joanne is watching along and listening along, and we've been forcing her to watch and listen to all of these episodes and check out the movies as they go. So yeah, definitely watch along and let us know what you think and let us know what your favorites are. We'd love to have you as part of the crew. It'll be great. And we plan on having some episodes where we bring on guests. So if you want to come on the show too, we're more than happy to have a special guest talk through their favorite movies and why. So, but yeah, all right, we did it. We're heading to the wrap. Thanks, Kimberly, for watching. Thanks everyone else for tuning in and listening wherever you are. We hope you have an absolutely fantastic week, and we will see you again next time. Bye, everyone.